our channel. Let us start our part 2. So first we need to discuss the effects of renal failure on body fluids. So if the kidney fails, the water and urine, the water and sodium start retaining in the body. So because of this, it may lead to accumulation of fluids in the body, that is nothing but edema. So it may lead to generalized edema. So you can check out it may lead to generalized edema because of water and sodium retention as kidneys failed, and also acidosis from the kidney failure to get rid of acid. In acidosis, why acidosis comes in kidneys, the proximal convoluted tubule fail to secrete the hydrogen ions. So as the hydrogen ions fail to get secreted, so the bicarbonate just start getting rid from the body, that is lot of bicarbonate is lost in the urine. So because of this, it may lead to acidosis. And also there is increased concentration of NPN. NPN means non-protein nitrogen, like urea, creatine, uric acid. So all these concentrations start increasing in the body, because here as the kidney has failed, it has no more chance to get reabsorbed. And also there is increased concentration of phenol, sulfate, phosphate, potassium, guanide bases. So all this actually need to be reabsorbed by the kidney, but all these concentrations are also increasing in the blood. So this total condition is called uremia, that is increase in concentration of urea in body fluids. So normally this urea, all this should be getting excreted in the body, but now you can see their concentration is getting increased in the blood, like this urea, creatine, uric acid are increasing in the blood, and also phenol, sulfate, phosphate, potassium, all this concentration are increased in the blood instead of getting rid from the body. And next, chronic CKD means chronic kidney disease. Chronic kidney disease will lead to water retention and edema, because as the kidney is damaged now, normally what is the kidney function, it need to just remove the sodium from the urine and also water from the urine. But in some conditions, like whenever the glomerular filtration rate is low, then as this is low, the renin and angiotensin 2 will increase in the body. So because of this, they will try to retain the sodium in water. So that is one condition. And other condition is, as now the kidneys are failed, they try to retain more sodium and water. So let us see here the water retention and along with the normal thirst. So here the thirst mechanism is not getting adjusted with this, but as the water retention is also increasing, at the same time the thirst mechanism is also high. So because of thirst mechanism, we try to take more water inside. So as we are drinking more water, at the same time there is also water retention. This will lead to edema. So this edema will also of course lead to increase in blood pressure, that is hypertension in kidney patients. So hypertension in kidney dysfunction is common. This can be reduced by means of dialysis. So actually dialysis is where we use artificial kidney. So this artificial kidney filters out all the waste. It acts like a kidney, so we can decrease the blood pressure by using dialysis. And in some people, by removal of kidney, also this may lead to water retention, because if we remove kidney, then aldosterone and renin will increase a lot, so that it will lead to retention of water. And also in ischemic conditions, also in kidney ischemia, like ischemia means low blood flow to the kidney, low blood flow, low GFR. If there is low GFR, also again the renin and angiotensin 2 will get stimulated. So because of this, also again it will lead to edema. Now let us see how hypertension and kidney disease are related. So the primary kidney damage, whenever the kidney damage, it will lead to increase in blood pressure. So this increase in blood pressure will increase the damage to the kidney. This is like a vicious cycle, because as the blood pressure start increasing, it will damage the kidney, because more blood pressure, more blood flow coming to the kidney, less time for reabsorption. So this will further damage the kidney, and increase in blood pressure, again increase in blood pressure, until finally the end stage renal disease appears. So if this vicious cycle continues, like between hypertension and kidney disease, then until the end stage renal disease forms, this will be continuing. So damage to certain portion of kidney may cause uremia without increase in blood pressure. Whereas in some cases, as we discussed, uremia means all the waste products are getting accumulated in the blood. So this uremia may be seen sometimes without any blood pressure, increase in blood pressure. And sometimes we'll also see with increase in blood pressure. Renal lesions. So in renal lesions means some abnormalities in kidney that reduce the ability of kidney to excrete sodium and water and promote increase in blood pressure. so that may also increase the blood pressure. And renal lesions, which actually decrease the glomerular filtration rate and increase the tubular reabsorption, this will lead to hypertension. So this is how hypertension is developed. And also sodium and water are retaining in the case of renal diseases. So some specific types of abnormalities which may cause increase in blood pressure are increase in renal vascular resistance. So whenever the resistance is increased means the blood flow will be decreased, so there is decreased blood flow and also decrease in glomerular filtration rate. So examples you can take like hypertension, which is caused by renal artery stenosis. So whenever there is stenosis, or the blood vessels got narrowed, it is nothing but it is having higher resistance, so that the blood flow will be decreased. So here the example is hypertension, which is caused by renal artery stenosis. So because of stenosis, as there is low blood flow means higher blood pressure, so that is caused by stenosis. And next one is decrease in GFR coefficient, which decrease the GFR. Example, chronic glomerulonephritis, which causes inflammation and thickening of glomerular filtration membrane, so this reduces the glomerular filtration coefficient. So if the glomerular filtration membrane has got thickened, then the glomerular filtration rate would also decrease. And also whenever there is excessive tubular sodium reabsorption, so whenever there is excessive tubular sodium reabsorption, so whenever there is excessive sodium reabsorption, what happens? Of course hypertension, because more sodium, wherever the sodium goes, water follows it, so it will lead to hypertension by excessive aldosterone secretion. And even aldosterone also is secreted a lot, so this will again further lead to sodium water reabsorption, so which increases sodium reabsorption mainly in the cortical collecting tubules. Next, once the hypertension has developed, the renal excretion of sodium and water return to normal because of increase in arterial pressure. So as you have seen, like now as the blood pressure has increased, so now the renal excretion of sodium and water will now become normal, because already there is lot of blood pressure in body, so now we need to remove them by excreting out the sodium and water. And this causes pressure natriuresis, because as here the arterial pressure is very high now, this causes pressure natriuresis, means because of more arterial pressure, now the sodium is forcibly getting out from the urine, and also causes pressure diuresis, that is because of higher pressure, now even the urine is getting out from the body. So intake and output of sodium and water become balanced once again, so again everything comes normal. So the normal excretion of sodium and water at an elevated arterial pressure means that the pressure natriuresis and pressure diuresis have been reset to the higher arterial pressure. So the specific tubular disorders. So let us see what are the disorders. First one is renal glycosuria. So it's actually a failure of kidneys to reabsorb glucose. So normally glucose, amino acids, all are 100% reabsorbed in a proximal convoluted tubule. So here it's a failure, means the glucose is getting down into the urine, right? So here the glucose concentration in the blood is normal, but still the glucose concentration in the blood is normal, but the glucose concentration in the urine is getting increased, and this is always associated with diabetes mellitus. So next, coming to renal tubular acidosis. There is the failure of tubules to secrete the hydrogen ions, so large amount of sodium bicarbonate is lost in urine. So we know all this mechanism which is going on in the proximal convoluted tubule, we have already a video on this. So this is mainly caused by hereditary disorders or occurs as a result of widespread injury to renal tubules. So whenever the renal tubules are damaged, they can't secrete the hydrogen ions, and a lot of bicarbonate is lost in the urine, so this will lead to acidosis. And next, coming to nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. So what is this nephrogenic? Here actually there is a failure of kidney to respond to ADH. So antidiuretic, in the name itself you can understand, antidiuretic means it doesn't allow diuresis, means it whenever this antidiuretic hormone is present, it will lead to concentrated urine, but here now the kidney is not able to respond to this, so that it will lead to diuresis, so here causing large dilute urine. So the person should be supplied with adequate water, because as the person is constantly losing the dilute urine, if the person will not drink water, he may get dehydrated. So this may cause severe difficulty if the person is not taking more water, and the person becomes dehydrated. Next comes the Fanconi syndrome. So Fanconi syndrome is a generalized reabsorptive defect of renal tubules, where there is higher excretion of all amino acids, glucose, phosphates, other. So actually here also failure of kidney, that it is not able to reabsorb glucose, amino acids, and some other phosphates, etc. So the failure to reabsorb the sodium bicarbonate results in acidosis. So here bicarbonate is not getting reabsorbed, so it will lead to acidosis. And also increase in excretion of potassium and calcium, and nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. So these are all the conditions. Next, causes. The causes may be hereditary defects in cellular transport mechanisms, toxins or drug which may injure the epithelial cells, and injury to tubular cells result of ischemia. So these are maybe different causes. So because of this, the either proximal convoluted cells or the epithelial cells are not able to reabsorb the important nutrients. So PCT is a proximal convoluted tubule which is especially affected by the Fanconi syndrome. So that is the reason why mainly the glucose and amino acids are getting excreted, because proximal convoluted tubule is a site where the glucose and amino acids get reabsorbed. So this is mainly caused by tubular injury, because these cells reabsorb and secrete many drugs and toxins that cause damage. Now finally we have come to the treatment part, the treatment of renal failure. So we have two choices to treat this renal failure. Either by transplantation, you can transplant the other kidney, or also you can do the dialysis process with the artificial kidney. So let us check out this. So actually the transplanted patients can live long when compared with dialysis. So dialysis is like a just temporary to save the patient, but if the patient has come to end stage renal disease, then the best option is go for the transplantation. So transplantation gives immunosuppressants, so we have some side effects, like as we are giving more immunosuppressants, the patient may not have the natural immunity, so they're having higher chances of infection, and also they may get some kind of cancers. So in certain acute kidney injuries, the dialysis is preferred, because in the beginning we need to temporarily save the patient, and the basic principle of dialysis is to pass the blood by minute blood channels which are bound by thin membrane. Other side, the membrane removes unwanted substances in the blood passed by diffusion. So if you see this diagram, we can understand this. So here you can see this is how the dialysis works. So you can see this is a fresh dialysing solution. So this is a constant temperature bath. This is used dialysis solution. So from here the dialysis fluid start going, and here you can see this is a thin membrane by which the blood passes, so that if any concentration in the plasma is high, for example urea, creatine, all these substances, as they are high now, they get diffused into this dialysis fluid so that they'll get out. So in this dialysing fluid we'll get all those metabolic waste products, and the blood is coming here from the kidney into this dialyzer. Now this is an artificial kidney, so here this diffusion takes place and all the waste get out, and finally the fresh blood will again flow into the body. So this is how the dialysing machine works. So you can see here the blood flow between the cellophane. Outside the membrane it's a dialysing fluid. So about this is a cellophane. So outside you can see it's a dialysing fluid, so that the blood which is having any substance, any solute in the blood is in higher concentration, then it moves from the higher concentration to the lower concentration, so that the dialysis fluid can capture all the metabolic waste and it will get out. So this allows the plasma constituent except plasma proteins. Concentration increase the plasma to decrease concentration dialysis fluid, that is fluid moves from higher concentration to low concentration. So it mainly depends in concentration gradient of solute, permeability of molecules, permeability of membrane, surface area, and length of the time that blood and fluid remain in constant with the membrane, contact with the membrane. So you can see to prevent coagulation, actually now you can see the blood is outside the body, so of course it will get coagulated. So to prevent that, we are using heparin here to heparin is added to that 500 ml of blood in an artificial kidney. So actually only 500 ml of blood is filtered by means of this dialysis. So as you can see, as a solutes, like any waste products are going into the dialysing fluid. So as the solutes move, even the water follows it. We know every time we are discussing, as a sodium move, water also moves along it. So here as the solutes go into the dialysing fluid, water may also follow it. So such kind of filtration is called bulk flow or hemofiltration. So why it is called bulk flow or hemofiltration? Because along with the solutes even the water is flowing. So hemofiltration, here the word hemo means we are now filtrating the blood. So the name is bulk flow or hemofiltration. So no phosphate, urea or sulfate, creatine before in dialysing fluid, but later they enter. So before this all are not present, because as we discussed, Slowly, this dialysing fluid absorbs all the solutes from higher concentration to lower concentration, that is from the blood to the dialysing fluid. So artificial kidney clears the urea like about 100 to 255 milliliter per minute. So they work twice rapidly than the normal kidney, because normal kidney can only filter 70 milliliter per minute. So you can see that this artificial kidney can clear the urea about like twice when compared with both normal kidney. But this is limited, but because it is used only 4 to 6 hours per day and like only 3 times a week, so this can't compensate the whole body's normal kidney function. So it's limited because can't produce and it have the functions of normal kidney. So by this we have completed our complete renal physiology, and next we'll do the complete revision section of our renal physiology, and we'll move on to our endocrine, reproductive and our CNS. These are the three which are remaining.